So when Marlene invited me to come here and talk about emotional communication and trauma, I didn't know why. I thought, well, why me? And I felt very overwhelmed by it. And if I'm honest, not worthy, really. Now I'm here with you all, I feel like Marlene has given me such a great gift. So thank you. And I hope I can do right by you all for this wonderful opportunity. So it all began for me, the whole emotional communication thing, when I became a mum. So that was 23 years ago. And like with a lot of the very big things in my life, I had not thought this through. So yeah, I don't do details. I'm just big picture. Yeah, baby will come. Don't really think beyond that. So baby arrives, and I found the whole thing just completely shocking. So being a mother, completely shocking, giving birth, completely shocking, and probably for the first maybe 5 to 7 days, I was literally in shock and didn't get the whole emotional connection thing, didn't even know what it was supposed to be. And then one day I was changing my beautiful boy on this changing mat, and suddenly this massive golden light rushed in the room and hit me just so hard, and I just fell just desperately in love with this little bundle, and the emotional communication was no longer an issue. So then it began for my beautiful Joseph, this journey where his mum just did lots of emotional communication. So he would come in from school, oh, Mum, Stuart was really mean today, and he did this and he did that. And I'd say, oh, wow, how does that feel for you? But then we had to always explore how it felt for Stuart. So that sometimes involved quite a lengthy conversation while we weighed up what might be going on for Stuart, any childhood trauma he might have experienced, what happened on the school morning before he got into school, how the So one day he was like going through another one of these Stuart situations. So he just ripped off this little piece of paper and he drew a face and he stood it up next to my coffee mug. And he said, Mum, could you just talk to John? Because I have to go and play now. So that was when I maybe knew I'd overdone the emotional communication. But that said, guess what he studied when he went to university? Sociology and criminology. So all that looking around and up and over has stood him in good stead. And he's now traveling the world and hopefully taking all that with him. So yay. So fast forward about 20 years or so, and I'm in the Science Museum in Bristol with my beautiful step-granddaughter. She's amazing, of course. She's called Mia. And her mum was pregnant with her third child at the time, and they had a walk-in womb in the Science Exploratory. And Mia was desperate to go stand in the womb. I was desperate not to go stand in the womb. I don't know, I just found it creeped me out a bit. But anyway, of course, because she wanted to, I went with her and I stood in the womb and we moved around because we were the unborn child and we heard all the sounds and I smiled and explored and all the rest of it. And then they played outside of the womb, they played a tape where the mum is obviously getting ready to give birth, so she's talking, and the dad was there, and it was all quite anxious, as it would be, and a lot of kind of raised voices and excitement and anxiety and all that. And I listened to all this, and I thought, whoa, that's what that baby heard. Okay? So that was that baby. Now, the kind of families that I've worked with for the last 20 years, their babies grew up mostly in chaos and domestic abuse and around substance misuse and mental illness. So the next morning I was thinking about the experience with Mia, and I thought of all those babies I know and I've worked with for years, and that they could hear all that every day. So that was their first experience of emotional communication, and it would have been scary, and it was just terrible for them. And it was a good lesson for me, but I found it very difficult to think of that and to have heard it. And in my work, particularly the last job that I had the great privilege, I worked for a domestic violence organisation. And so I would sometimes do the work with the parents, and sometimes I would get to do some one-to-one work with the children, which was like, yay! But my focus was primarily the parents. So I got to work with this gorgeous little boy called Martin. And I arrived one day, we were given this classroom that was a kind of, it was a bit disused and a bit shabby and a bit dusty, and the toys were not great, but I had my own box of tricks with me. And because it was our first session, what I liked to do with the children, to have some idea about their ability to communicate emotionally, was I would take along a sheet of words. And we would just do a little, no pressure, but just a little chat about what this word means to me. The first word on the paper being angry. Now, children who grow up with domestic abuse, they definitely know what the word angry means. And they usually get, as soon as they display their behavior, their trauma, they get labeled as being angry, and that they've learnt to be angry by what they've seen, and angry, morning, noon, and night. So he definitely could give me what that word meant to him. Happy, he had to think for a really, really long time. And then he said, oh, Christmas. You get happy at Christmas. And I found that devastating, that it took so long, and he couldn't relate to it in his everyday life, but he remembered that when it's Christmas time, people are happy, you get happy. Love, he wasn't so sure about. Frightened, he told me this massive story about being on a roller coaster, and that went on for a long time. Sad, he wasn't quite sure. Lonely, he didn't know. Violent, the last word, he knew that really well and could give me lots of examples. So it got me thinking about Martin and all the other Martins that I've met, and their lack of ability, because of their early start in life, to communicate in any way on an emotional level. And they just don't have the words. They don't recognize actually what it feels like in their body. So any feeling just elicits their fight, flight, freeze, friend, or flop response. So it could be really happy, but if their response is normally fight, they'll go hit somebody because they don't recognize it as any different. And it got me looking at, so what can we do about this? And unfortunately, because the funding ran out, I lost my job, which I loved so much, in domestic violence. And I had to leave all the parents, and I had to leave the children and the young people. And I didn't leave them with a tool, and I couldn't find a book. And I wanted to give them a book. So in my newfound redundancy and self-employment, I had time. And I had a book in my head anyway, which I just carried with me for a long time. So I thought I'll just get on and write the book. And it was a book about a baby bear who lives in a stormy house. And I'm glad to say that it got published, and it's now there as a tool for these families if I can just get it to them. And in my life now, I have the great privilege to work on a project about adolescents who are using violence and threats towards their parents, so in Bristol. So what did I think I would find when I went there? I thought, do you know what? I'm going to find the baby bears. These will be the big bears now, because the baby bears did not get this input. They didn't get any emotional communication. They didn't get it at home. They didn't get it at school. Unless they had somebody come into their orbit and their lives who helped them communicate emotionally, they will not be able to do it. So I know when I go down to Bristol, I'm going to find big, scared bears who are scaring other people, but they are very scared and they don't have the words to tell anybody. And sure enough, I spend the time now that I'm in Bristol with big, scared, beautiful, beautiful bears who can't tell anybody how they feel. So they take a lot of cannabis, so they jump off very high walls, so they have massive outbursts and alienate the people that they need most in their lives. And it's desperate. So that's where I am with them. And it just sort of, it brings it all back to words, doesn't it? It's all about those words. So the children that I'm talking about, they grow up in a house where there's often a lot of words. There's a lot of communication, but it's not emotional. So what I would like to do is to read you a poem that comes from this place of not having the words. And I need my glasses now because I didn't bring them with me. And it's about the importance of words and what they can do and what they can mean. Words always matter. Words last, linger, stay, won't go away. Bruises, shoves, slaps also shock, scare and stay, but words are fixed on continuous replay, available at night, early morning, all throughout the day. You are so clumsy, forgetful, slow, hasty, useless, hopeless. Always the last two, never the best, worse than useless. You wind me up, drive me crazy, make me do it. Be more like your sister. You never listen. It's your fault I hit. You're too thin, you're too fat. Why on earth are you wearing that? A parent at the end of their tether, stressed, tired, drained. Angry words, freely fired, can be all that remain. Lasting impressions of imperfection and failure, taken to bed, to play round in a sleepy head. No dreams to caress, only sad, angry nightmares instead. With the changes from child to teen to adult, too many days shaped by word and each insult. Holding an internal map of how rubbish they are, to intrude on every connection, decision, venture, desire. Still verbally doubted, mocked, maligned from within and afar. Words can be kind, curious, caressing, sustaining, held closely in heads, in hearts, all are worth retaining. Words to reinforce. You are good. You are good enough. A daily dialogue of strength, belief, and joy is what's needed. Kind words will enable and allow a child to grow, flourish, and succeed.